In today's video, I want to show you guys on how you can make a study or assignment tracker, and this is perfect for students with a busy schedule, so that way they can keep track and be on top of all their assignments and exams. So without further ado, let's just jump right in. Okay, so here I am on a new Google Sheets document. Now, the first thing that I want to do is I just want to make the headers for my document, for my assignment tracker, that is, such as, the different classes that you have, what type of assignment it is, whether it's, homework, essay, group project, or just simply a study session. The type, of course, the types that I just mentioned just now, the due date, whether it's done or not. So I'm going to have a check mark later here on this column. And we're going to have a difficulty as well, just so you could gauge like, okay, how hard do you think this assignment or this task is? And also just putting in a priority, right? Whether it's a low priority, medium priority, high. What I'm going to do here, I'm just going to select row 1. I'm going to hit Control B to bold my text. I'm just going to increase the font size a little bit and center it just so that way I could see it a little bit better. Okay, so now I'm just going to go ahead and resize this column B, for example, because, there's going to be probably a longer assignment title, the class here as well, the type, the due date could be a little bit smaller, and done I could actually just shrink it because it's going to be a checkbox later on. And difficulty, you can just leave it like this, and priority, the same size as well. Okay. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to just select this row A. I'm going to maybe select about 20 rows down. You can always drag it out later. I'm going to go ahead and hit insert and go to drop down. And what this lets me do is that it allows me to create new drop downs for my class. So for example, here I have algebra. Let's just, just some random classes, right? I have physics. You could set them obviously to different colors. So algebra could be, red. Physics could be blue. English could be, or history is purple. And then when you're done, you just hit done here. And you want to make sure you don't allow multiple selections, right? Because, obviously one assignment is dedicated for a class. Hit done, and now you can go ahead and pick, what class you have for that assignment. So for example, here we have something for algebra or physics. Let's stick with algebra, and that is to, study the quadratic formula, right? So the type here, same thing. I'm going to go ahead and select it all the way down. And I'm going to go ahead and insert another drop down here as well. And I'm going to just change the, the type. So it's going to be either homework, individual project. Doesn't matter what you want to categorize it. Again, same thing. You could mess with the coloring over here. So the due date here, I'm going to go ahead and go to column D, just selecting this D at the top. You go to format and you go to something called number and you go to date. Okay. So that way, whenever you enter anything in this column, it just becomes a date. So for example, like 122, it just formats it nicely to the date 2026. Okay. For done here, I'm going to go ahead and just select all this down here. I'm going to hit insert and hit checkbox. So that way it's a very simple, whether you've done it or not. Okay. Difficulty, I'm going to go ahead and select everything here. Now, Google Sheets actually has this feature where you can actually insert smart chips, and it's called a rating. Okay, so it's like a, you could just rate like 1 star, 2 star, 3 star, or you could just start at 0 here, which is the default. What it is just a numerical value depending on what you put it, so it just becomes a 3. It's just nice because it has stars on it. And priority, of course, you can also just do another drop down here, and you could do, low, medium, and then high priority. Okay, and obviously I'm just going to change the colors here to match it a little bit. High being red, low priority being green, as in it's probably something very, very easy. So study quadratic formula, I'm just going to give it like a low priority, probably like a 2-star difficulty, and I'm not done with it yet. And it's just a study session. Okay, so this is how you would typically populate it. Now we're actually going to count how many assignments are complete and not complete, and we can do that per class. So we can do it per different types, and we can actually add visualization charts. Okay, so how I'm going to do this is I'm going to do something called unique. So it's a formula where I type in equal sign unique, and then I'm going to do an opening parentheses here and do unique A. And what this does is that it gets all the unique inputs from A. Okay, so it gets the class here, and then it gets all the unique inputs. So for example, if I have algebra and algebra again, it's not going to duplicate itself because it's not a unique entry. But if I have something like physics, you can see here that it populates physics because it is now a unique entry that I have here. History, for example. Okay, so we can do this. And then what we can do here is that we can just have something called done and a not done. And the done, we're going to type in another formula. It's going to be very, very simple. I promise you. So it's going to be equal sign. We're going to do count ifs with an S, count ifs with an S, opening parentheses. Now, what are we going to count? Well, we're going to count the amount of column A, right? And what will column A match? Well, it will match this algebra, right? We'll see if how many of them are, you know, this category here to the left of this cell, so which is algebra, and later it's going to be physics, later it's going to be history. And then we're going to do another comma. What do we want it to check for? Well, we want to check how many of them are done. So where do we store that information? We store that info in column E. And then what do we want to set it to? Well, if it's done, we want to count it. So we're going to do true. Okay. So we're going to close this. But before we close this and hit enter on the formula, I'm going to put some $signs here to kind of anchor this column down. So that way, when we shift it over to not done later, it doesn't, you know, it doesn't conflict. Okay. It's just going to keep it at I2 and column A. So just follow what I'm doing, add the $signs, so that way it doesn't shift around when we're moving this formula. Okay. So I hit done, and then what I can do here is I can just drag it all the way down. And now when you start hitting done here, it'll start counting. So that's 1, that's 2, that's 3. And then if we do physics, it'll go to the physics one. If we do history, it'll go to the history one. Okay. And now what we can do is we can just kind of copy the formula. So I'm just going to drag it over here to not done. So that's just, the formula should remain the same. But instead of true here, obviously you want to count how many of them are not complete. So I don't have any algebra assignments that are not complete, but as soon as I start unchecking them, you can see that it starts moving it here to not done, okay? And then the physics and history, I have 2 non-complete assignments. So what I can do with this is that I can actually just drag this all the way down, depending on how many classes you think you're gonna have. So for example, here I have 5 classes, so I could have just dragged it down to here. And then that way, when I have a chemistry and an English class here, you can see here that I have different entries that are not done. So with that being said, you're gonna go to insert and you're gonna hit chart, okay? And when you hit chart over here, you can see that it kind of already tells you like what's done and what's not done. It kind of already gives you a range. It knows what it's trying to do. But for example, your Sheets doesn't recognize this. You can just remove this data range here and you could hit select data range. And you could just pick this data range right here, this table that you just made, okay? The class and how much is done and how much is not done. When you hit OK, it'll kind of do the same thing. And what you want to do is you want to change the chart type to a stacked bar type, okay? So, or a stacked column chart, which is what I like personally. Or you can do a bar. It doesn't matter if you want a column or a bar where it goes, you know, horizontal. But you can see here that when I start hitting done on my algebra, okay, you can see that it'll start populating. It'll start turning blue, saying that, okay, I've finished 2 and then I have 1 left that's not complete, okay? You just double click this blue one right here. You could change it to fill color and you can make it green, for example, okay? So green is like done, you know, and then the red, the not done, you could change it to, again, red or like a darker red. And then you could again, double clicking the chart will allow you to customize like different things like titles. So, you know, assignments complete, for example, per class. So I could just delete this done and not done. And then you can, you know, bold the titles here. You can hit bold. You can change the font size. So again, it's very, very, you know, flexible in terms of what you can do with the chart. And again, you can resize it, and then you can just put it over your thing, your table. If you don't like the table and you would want to just see a visual, you can just do this. And again, you could do the exact same thing. You could follow the exact same mechanic if you want it with type. So I'm just going to do that real quick. So I'm going to do equals to unique, right? And then we're going to do, this time we're going to do type. So you want to see how much is done, you know, whether you need to write more essays, whether you need more study sessions. You do this, and then you can see here that there's a type over here, right? Study session and whatsoever. And then for this one, you can do the same thing like this formula. So we're gonna count ifs. Okay, so I'm just gonna grab this and just copy it. I'm gonna paste it here, but this time instead of A to A, we're gonna take it by the type, which is on column C. Okay, so it'll be C to C, and then it'll be I 22, right? Because I'm gonna start from here 22. So instead of I2, it'd be I22, and it's still gonna check whether that type is done or not, and then we're gonna go to true, which is correct. So again, here, when you have that, right, and it's checking whether this type is complete or not, you can see that I've marked this study session done. But if I didn't, I have a 0 here, and I have a 1 here on the study session. I could do the same thing, drag it here and change it to false. And then when I, you know, check this, it just kind of turns this both on and off, kind of zigzag, right? Which makes sense. And then again, if you, depending how many assignments types you have, I have 5 again exactly. You can just go ahead and drag this down 5 below it, and it should populate whatever is going to be another unique one here. So for example, group project, you can see I have a study session. I have 2, for example. It will know that. essays, homework, and individual project. You can see that it just starts populating on its own, okay? Even if you have no entries here, it will just start populating on its own. And then again, what you can do here is you can make the same chart. So insert, chart, and then from here, you can actually go ahead and change the date. So like I said, this chart doesn't know what it's looking for. You can just hit this select data range, remove this I-28, and just grab this, okay? Grab that and just hit okay. And then sometimes you need a title, so like done and not done, because I didn't put that in here yet. And then you want to make sure that with your chart, you can just double click it again, or just single click if you want to take a look at it. And then you can see here, you can use row 21 as headers, which is true because row 21 is the headers. Same thing here, okay? If you want to look at this, you can also use row 1 as headers, which it already does by default. And I use column I as labels, which is the class. Same thing for this one as well. So you can use column I as labels. It's not going to change anything. And again, if you don't like the column chart, or the stacked column chart like this, you would rather, prefer a bar chart or a very, very similar layout to this one, you could do the same thing as well, where it's like, assignments per type. You can add a title, chart title here, and you could do assignments done by type. Okay, so now you have that, and then it should populate. And again, yeah, you could use this to cover up the charts. It doesn't seem too crowded up there, and then you can resize it however you like. Now, the last thing that I want to show you guys is how you can actually create a filter so you can sort stuff. So with that being said, you just kind of drag all these columns here, go to data, and then what you want to do is you want to click create a filter. And what that does is it makes these headers, you can actually sort the classes. You could uncheck chemistry if you don't want to see any chemistry classes. You could check it back in if you want. You could sort it from, difficulty low to high, whether they're done or not, their priority, so on and so forth, okay? So with that being said, that's exactly how you make an assignment tracker. And then obviously what you can do is you can make one row above it, and you can actually just title everything here. So I'm going to just go ahead and merge everything and title it, for example, it's going to be spring 2026 semester. Whatever you want to name it, you can just name it here, assignment tracker. Boom. And again, if you ever want to, have different semesters and stuff, you can go ahead and go down here and just duplicate this. So right click, duplicate. And then what you can do is you can just start removing a lot, like the data, for example, and start fresh. So just go ahead and remove everything, uncheck this, and then uncheck and remove this one. And then there you go. You can start, for example, you have fall 2026 assignment tracker, and everything will populate as if it's a new template. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this assignment or study tracker on Google Sheets. If you did, don't forget to hit the like and hit the subscribe button down below. And I'll see you guys all in the next video.